Hello, it's Luke coming at you from the shop. Video number 2 update and slash number 1. Now, as I go along, because I am recovering, I'll be addressing some things maybe I left out or maybe people would have a question about in prior videos. So right here, here's a nice 36-1 wheel that I got laser cut over in Great Britain. This guy's a little 4-inch guy. It's very small, but it meets the criteria. The teeth are over 2 millimeters apart, 2 millimeters wide, and it's a 36-1. And there's other setups to these wheels. So these wheels could have a filled in set of teeth over here, so they'll have one big tooth, and then you have a missing tooth. And that allows 180-degree accuracy in the timing. Mopar uses that right now on the Gen 3 Hemis. Well, on the older Gen 3 Hemis, they were 36 plus 2 minus 2. So I had 2 missing teeth here and then 2 extra filled in teeth over here. And that was to allow it to get more accuracy to run the multi-displacement engine system. Now that encoder wheel is the most important part. That's why that is video 1 and it will stay video 1. Without that encoder wheel on the crankshaft, you ain't running nothing. You can get away without a cam sensor, but you cannot get away without that. Granted, without the cam sensor, you're stuck on batch fire and wasted spark, but that just is what it is. So, now we're going to get into the potatoes of the swap that I'm doing. So, Suzuki LTR throttle body, got it used off eBay in really good shape. Paid about, it's 43 millimeters, or 42. It's, I paid, I think 150. Came with a good fuel injector. It still works. I've had it sent out, cleaned, and tested at Eric Durr. And the TPS sensor actually works because I put the meter on it. Tested it that way first with ohms, and then I tested again with a 5-volt battery hooked up to it, and which was really just 3 AA's wired together, and then positive, negative in, and then I could just read the signal as I worked the blade. This is a hookup for your map sensor, so I'm just going to use a GM external 3-bar map sensor. What's up, Chomper? Chomper and his dad. Alright, so that is the main part. That's the throttle body. So that's a big chunk taken care of quick and easy. This is a brand new Honda fuel pump pot. Basically, you could think of it as like a mini surge tank, because when Honda first started building EFI, most of their bikes could be carb or EFI. You could option them either way. So they didn't want to change the fuel tanks and change all the molding and all this crazy stuff to put an in-tank pump. So they took a small pump, fuel pressure regulator, and boom, here it is. There's an inlet, a vent line, and then a high pressure output line, and then obviously the connection for that. I actually bought this one I got for free with rewards points from Rocky Mountain a long time ago, and this one was I think $50 or $60 off eBay, and it actually works as well. I've already bench tested it. So now as far as the main ECU and system, here we are. Here's our micro squirt. If you're talking any kind of E8 import or motorcycle engine management systems that are aftermarket, these guys are pretty much going to be the only go-to you're going to really find. There's some other companies doing it. I just don't know how readily available it is to find the information to do their swaps. Let alone the open source software makes this pretty easy to set up too. 30-inch harness with an AMSeal connector. We got some 1/4 inch. These are the brown tabs, and on the blue tabs are 5/16 that adapts from here to here. So I have to make a couple of these that will allow me to adapt one to the other size-wise with the line. So, and then in here, this line is supposed to fit either connector. There's a special tool I have that basically just smashes these together. If you look really closely, there's a little seal on the end there. Come on. There you go. And it puts that barb on, smashes that seal, seals it up real good. So that's fast introduction to the hard parts, with the exception of this guy over here. I believe this is for the wideband that measures oxygen in the exhaust and allows me to more fine-tune the motor. So, and then the last other sensor you'll see here is this used one off a Can-Am. This is what I said, repurposing. So I don't know if the Hall effect sensors from Micro Squirt or Mega Squirt companies that sell them will be compatible with oil. So this is off a Can-Am, and this was a 180 on, 180 off sensor. Literally, it just read a little tiny tab that bolts in behind a super lightweight piece of, it was a folded piece of tin that went on the cam gear. So that's something I could easily repurpose and make my own housing do. What's up, Chopper? And use that as a method of getting my cam signal if I have to. All I have to do is the same thing. I could basically make a bent tab that's lifted up away from any other metal, bolt it to the cam gear so it spins with the cam gears keyed to it, and I can just set it up to be 180 on, 180 off. And it's so light, it's not going to cause an imbalance issue or anything inside the motor. So for the record, the motor that's going on does turn about 10, 11,000 RPM, so that is something I am considering. It's also why when I built the crank wheel that goes on the crankshaft, the run out's only 4/1000 of an inch in total. The worst play is 4/1000. Radial, axial, it's very small. So this is a fast intro. Now, there's our other sensors that I haven't talked about yet. There would be, so as I said with the throttle body, I have a TPS and I have the injector. What is it missing? Map sensor. Well, I can go to the junkyard and get about 1 million of those external maps off GM products for peanuts. Perfectly good. They're everywhere. And connectors to go with them if I need it. And you can even buy the connectors. GM's the most common sensor to use because everybody uses that. And they're also really reliable, and all the information is out there to set up your calibrations, which makes life a lot easier too. So what is that missing? I'm missing an intake air temperature. Again, I'll get that from the air intake tube of a GM. I need a coolant sensor, or in this case, I'm just going to actually weld a bung to the head, aluminum bung, and run that into it, and just use it as a physical temperature sensor on the head, so I know when the engine's warmed up and when I need to bring the engine out of warm-up cycle stuff into tune. So, I mean, honestly, this is all stuff you can get for peanuts. And you're going to ask this, well, what are you doing for coil and wires? And okay, GM LS coil. They'll run off the system easy peasy. It ditches the CDI problems, and I already have like 12 of those out in the shed. So I actually have all this stuff that I'm talking about actually in the shed. I already have it. I've had it for eons. I've been piecing together this project to go. What have I spent in total? About the same as I would on like a 38 or 40 millimeter Kean pumper carb in manifold, and then I'd still have to redo the airbox and all the tubing, just like I have to do with this. So it's actually pretty close. Like it's about $370 because I got it on sale for the microsquirt and the harness. Like I said, I only paid $60 for the pot, the Innovate wideband sensor, and a wideband itself of 4.9 LSU Bosch. All that was only a whole whopping $120. I got it off Amazon. So if you hunt around for dealers, you're gonna find them. Just hunt around, and also do watch out for scams. The line for those little connector ends are probably $1 or $2 a piece on Amazon, or you can also find them at Napa. The line itself was dirt cheap. So this is one of those things where this stuff's out there, just gotta look and find what it is. Maybe in a future video I'll actually put together a little fine-tuned list of all the little odds and ends you're gonna probably want. But being that we're gonna go through the actual physical wiring and the startup and all this stuff on my bike in video, that'll probably be another good guide for you there too. So that's the basic introduction. The only other update I'll be doing as far as wiring on this bike is I'm going to the 2003 and up wiring harness. And that's because the Polestar stator uses that stator as well, the stator cover. So what's nice about that is I can get a more powerful stator, more amperage to run all this electronics I now have. But believe it or not, even with like a 330 watt stator, I have more than enough juice to run all this. The only thing that ever runs a lot of juice in this EFI system is the wideband heater. It draws about 5 amps when you first start the bike until it gets up to temp, and then it shuts it off. So in other words, it doesn't run it the whole time anyways. So what else is on the bike that's drawing juice? The fuel pump only pulls about 2 or 3 amps at peak, and then it settles down to about 1.5 amps. So the fuel injector, very small draws. So you don't need a lot of electrical system. As long as you have adequate, you're okay. And you got to remember they're running sport quads with headlights and fuel injection on a 180 watt stator. So you really don't need a lot. I mean, if you're going to start throwing massive light bars and stuff, yeah, that's where you want the bigger stator. But to run a EFI system, it's really not a requirement. Oh, the last thing, the charging system. You're probably like, well, if you're doing all these changes, how this original CDI box in the Yamaha controls power to your voltage regulator, what are you going to do? Again, easy. Call up someone like RM Stator or Rick's Motorsports and order an independent standalone stator. It's the same 3 wires with a ground and a positive, and just let it self-regulate. Have it be a standalone system for regulation of the battery recharge. That's all you got to do. It's very simple, very straightforward. No reason to get all bent out of shape. Like I said, the only reason I'm going with the 03 harness really is that they standardize all the connections. So all the connections become the same at that point from then on forward. It just makes life so much easier than having to deal with the alternative, which in this case, you know, is going through a 25-year-old wiring harness. And with fuel injection, that is the biggest no-go. Don't do that. Don't be tempted to do it. New wires, it's just easier, especially something this small, where you're only running a few feet of wire one way or the other at most. There's no sense in trying to cheap out. That's all I got for today. Have fun and take care.